Alright, so after a fair amount of fluffing around and trying to figure out where we need to put this in relation to the manifold, exhaust manifold, flange, yada, so on and so forth in words, this I'm happy with. We have clearance to the strut tower there. We have clearance to the engine block there. This I will clock about almost a full 90 degrees, have the outlet over here, and weld on a cast 90 just to keep it nice and tight, but then get it away from the exhaust manifold right underneath it, because obviously that configuration isn't going to work out very well. Something else to make sure is that I had enough room back here to actually get the exhaust out and down without having to make it super tight, because that's going to make flow not great. And honestly, with where this is and how all this is turning out, it's probably just going to go this way and fender exit, because there's going to be a lot of manifold down there and it ain't really going to fit. But I am happy with this. It's got good clearance. It's in a good spot on the car in relation to everything else. It's right. Tried to line this up in between number 2 and 3 cylinders. I wanted to have it right in the middle, but then that didn't give me enough room to actually put the downpipe exhaust out somewhere, because I still have to run a wideband, so I need to have enough exhaust to actually get it, the air to not be turbulent and all that fun stuff. So if I run a fender exit, the wideband will be somewhere over here. Plus it makes maintenance easy if you can get to it. But yeah, so now that that's figured and everything's happy with where it is, now the real Tetris begins of trying to get all the exhaust ports into these 2 inlets for the manifold. After way too much time, there's my first merge. So I'm gonna have to put two of these on each of these concentrics, because I want to have the flow come in right as the exhaust is expanding up to this size, and this are the same input size, but now I need to put a third input, because I'm gonna have one of these for the first half of the engine, the first 3 cylinders, and the back side is going to have the other 3 cylinders, and they're all going to merge into these concentrics. That way you're putting the gas in right as it gets to the right size. I could try and put 2 into 1 here, but then you're going to get a lot of speed up of air right here, and then it's going to slow way back down. I'd much rather just kind of move everything in together at the same rate. So yeah, there's a little update. And I'll give you another one when I get some more stuff figured out. Sometimes your 90s aren't a tight enough radius, so you just gotta, whip out the old pie cuts and get a nice tight 90. That should be the ticket to getting the first cylinder done. only took me like 4 different tries. On the 4th and final time, I finally made one and coped it to fit right. Let's see if we can get this. Yeah. So yeah, just takes a bit of practice and, you know, you'll get there at the very end of your project, because that's always super helpful. I was finally able to figure out how to cope the tube to match it and how to cut it the right way. Well, the easiest way. The easiest way I found was to use a hole saw, just because it kind of gives you this radius already. And if you use a small enough one, you can get into like these smaller, more precise areas. But that hole saw teeth seem to cut stainless better than an angle grinder or everything. So yeah, that's just how I did it. I used just a cheap little tube notching jig that you can get off Amazon for, I think I got it on sale for like 30 bucks or something. And I tacked it to a round tube, that way I could hold on to it. And then just use the hole saw and punch through. I think I went through 4 different times on this, just to kind of trace this out, this profile a little bit, which I traced off the outside of the tube, but it has a wall thickness, so it should line up almost perfect. So now I get to go weld up this merge, and once I have the 2 merges on, then I can actually build the manifold. I didn't want to have to try and put a merge on tacked pieces on a manifold, just for the same exact reason I had to take this to the hole saw to cut it. It's a pain in the butt to cut and try and mark and all of that stuff. So let me do this, and then hopefully shortly you'll see me actually starting to put tubes onto the engine. Well, head in this case. Alright, so we finally have one cylinder all the way connected all the way to the turbo. This one, I just have to kind of create a little 90, notch the 90 down and fill the space into here. And then it's there to there, here to here. This one, I actually need to take all the way under to this underside here, but I have to kind of tight this through and shoot it back up forward, because there's an engine mount right here, and then this one goes to here. Now it's just about playing 3-dimensional Legos and cutting lots of tubes. Okay, just a little update. We now have a very unstable head, but cylinder 1 is now ran all the way to the turbo, and technically cylinder 5 is all the way to the turbo. Now, just get to do the other 4, which hopefully goes better than this one, because the flange started to warp a little bit. So my first few cuts were off and had to redo them. So that is fixed now. So it's just time to keep going, moving along. So this little tool is probably the most useful tool for fabricating, at least for this sort of stuff, because now I have this cylinder real close to where it needs to go, but I have this gap. It's not straight. It's not a 45, it's not a 90, so I can't really just cut a tube down and have it fit. What you can do with this guy is you can actually put it in here. This is a pretty tight angle, and you can use it to judge what angle you're at. Now that is close, but it's a little bit deeper than that still. I already did this, so I know that about as close as I'm gonna get for knowing what angle it is. So now I know that this angle, if you look into here, is 20 degrees. Yes, there, you know, there's 3 measurements there, but 20 degrees is the offset of this face right there to this face. It's not a lot. You can see if you look straight down at it, it's right around 20. So now with that, I can create a pie cut that's 10 degrees and flat on each side. That way the concentric circles line up. Because if you cut things at an angle, like this one, then this kind of face is a lot bigger and you can't weld it to, say, a straight tube because you get a giant gap at the bottom. So you have to marry like angled faces, otherwise you can't get them to line up. You can get by with just a tiny bit, but any more than that and it probably won't line up. So now just go to the bandsaw, set it at 10 degrees, make little pie cuts, drop them in there. It's the same thing I did here. Alright, so here we go. Here's a little pie. Trusted the process. I almost decided to change the angle at the last minute, but didn't. And there we have it. Basically a perfect transition. The sizes line up perfectly. Matches one to the other. And I didn't really have to do a lot of post-processing. Just cut it, clean up the cuts, tack them, cool it off, put it in place. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm gonna go through this. I'm gonna get it close to transitions and then I'll just have to cut pies and do the math and figure out where they need to go from there. Alright, now that we got 3 of the cylinders connected, I took off our little support brace. It's actually starting to kind of take shape now. And yes, I know this is not optimal flow, but that's just what we got. So this outlet's gonna go to here, and this outlet's gonna wrap all the way down and under to here. So we're gonna have the first 3 cylinders to the front side, back 3 to the back side. I mean, that's the best way to do it. That way you could even pulse distribution, and that's even how the factory manifold is. It's keeping front 3, back 3, pulsing the same. Should work out really well. And we're now up to 4. This one actually worked out really well. I just did a 90 off the flange, straight, and then these are 2 45s, and they just kind of flow right in. We just got 2 left. This one to here, this one down here. It's update number 5. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. They're all plumbed and routed. I am very proud of this. This is a whole pie assembly. That's a 90 up, transitions to a 45, straight to an actual leftover pie piece that I had from a different spot, and that lined up to here. So this whole run was done without any prefabricated bends, minus this one, which was part of the merge that I initially did. On to 6. That's the last one, and then I have like 4 hours of welding to weld all of it. Okay, I saved, well, probably the worst for last, but I wanted to get the feel back for everything before I got to that one. But, so, number 3 is right here. I have a motor mount right here. So I basically need to get it here, and then I can work it up to there. These are not going to be equal length. This one and this one, I mean, this one's obviously longer, but it's not terribly longer. Maybe got an extra inch or 2, if that. The ones back there are probably all pretty close just because there isn't that much space for them to be, because this is so close to there, there to there, back there to back there. So this one's just going to be the odd one out. And honestly, I'm shoving a massive engine in a tiny car. I'm going to have to make concessions somewhere. All right, finally. Took me like 4 or 5 revisions to try and get this one right. There's the engine mount right here, and it kept hitting it. So this is how it is. This one is much longer, but it is what it is. So that is all 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of them. And we're gonna test fit it in the engine one more time to make sure it actually fits before I lose my sanity. And there we have it. It's in. It clears that engine mount, which you can see there, I think. And also right through there, just barely, but if it fits, it ships. Misses all of this, bolts up just fine. And now I'm probably not gonna touch this for the rest of the week because it's been kicking my butt. Well, I don't know how many hours I spent welding to weld everything together, but it's all done. The only thing I still have to do is go around here and finish welding these up, but some of them, like up in here, I'm not gonna be able to do with it on the head, so I just need to get as much done on the head as possible, let it cool all the way down, and then I'll have to take it off and do the finish welding and clamp it to something else stiff. But that's it. That's how I went about it. And yes, I know I did not back purge the entire system, but that's a lot of money in gas. I already had to refill it once for this project, and honestly, for how much stuff actually protrudes and how brittle it is, I'm not super worried about it. I've done it in the past. If you just use a very shallow torch angle, it actually just kind of presses the metal all the way around. It doesn't actually push it through the metal surface. So it only came through in a few places around this, and in a few places here it got really, really thin just for how everything lined up. So I'm not worried about it. I'm sure someone will tell me otherwise and that I did it wrong and horrible things are gonna happen, but this is how I did it. Hopefully you learned something. If not, just, I don't know, hopefully you found it entertaining, but that's it. Until the next one, peace.